The number of women having support from their husbands in a dementia unit is the minority, because most women in dementia units are on their own. Their husbands have died, have been unable to support them, and often that's the reason that they've come into the facility, the dementia unit, in the first place. But for those women that are supported, it's a great asset because they're less lonely, less afraid, and also this experience of living in a dementia unit is more normalised when they see their husband coming and going once or often twice a day. For those dementia residents who have been in the retirement village prior and that's been prepared for them with their partner and family, that's a great help. So the husband and the wife who's had early dementia, they come into the facility, they have a unit, and then when the time comes, the woman goes on to the dementia unit. When that preparation is in place, it just makes for a more smooth, hassle-free experience. Whereas if the situation is such that the woman comes straight from home, often being younger in age, so if they come straight from home into the dementia unit, it's much more of a rift than if it's just from the retirement village itself. Also, with the husband now being in the retirement village, in the unit that he was with his wife prior, it means he's settled in that community, settled in that environment, and it's often only 200-300 metres for him to come and visit his wife at the dementia unit. So that's a very easy transition compared to if he's elderly and in a house 10 kilometres away and has to drive that distance and maybe eyesight's poor. That makes accessibility a lot more difficult. But it's a big range. I mean, of course, it's a huge range in terms of how a man supports a woman, his wife, once she's in a dementia unit. But generally what happens is that the support that he has given to her prior to coming into the dementia unit continues to be the same or similar support to what he gives after she comes into the unit. So, for example, there was one couple. He was a former school teacher. She'd had a varied life, many secretarial jobs, a real go-ahead woman. They loved tramping, walking, trekking up the Port Hills in Christchurch, walking along the beach. Every weekend they'd be out tramping and hiking and often going to the mountains as well. So they were a very physically fit, athletic, compatible couple. She was in her early 70s when she came into the unit. He was still extremely good with her. They'd worked out that they had got a unit in the retirement village in preparation for this event of her coming into the dementia unit. They'd had, I think, independent living. He continued to be in an independent unit because he was capable, could cook all his own meals and independent housekeeping, etc. So he kept up the independent unit, and then she came into the dementia facility. Every day he would visit, and still every day, hail, rain or shine, they'd be out walking. They continued their walking exercise, leisure, pleasure walking activity once she came into the unit, just as they'd done all their lives prior. So he just continued that with her. And it usually is like that. Those people or dementia residents, the female dementia residents who come in fit and are fit because they go out hiking and walking with their husbands, will continue that with him after they come into the unit. But it's really, if someone comes in unfit, that then the husband probably is as well, if they both don't go out walking, then he's unlikely to continue to or start to take her walking after she comes into the unit. So she'll probably continue to become more unfit. He will as well, no doubt. So these activities don't generally start up once people come into the unit. It's a continuous activity from their interests before. So that particular woman did well. She was in the unit for a long time, 5-6 years, and throughout that whole time he continued to take her not just out walking, but he'd also take her up the steps and stairs because the unit was on the first floor, so she'd get quadriceps leg strengthening. And she did really well. She kept her balance, she kept her walking capacity. She was able to stay at the unit all because of that exercise that they did together. And it was good for their relationship, because going for a walk together is a lovely way of being with someone with dementia. It really is, because when you're going for a lovely walk out in Mother Nature, nature does the talking for you, doesn't it? There's the birds and the bees, and there's so much to see, and the lovely fragrances, and you can just immerse yourself and experience it in silence, and a companionable silence as you're walking in nature. It's a beautiful experience. Whereas in the unit, when you're visiting, just sitting by someone, there's often that tension or stress to feel that you have to say something, rather than just, especially when you're on, it's a public situation, isn't it? So when you're visiting, you tend to like to be seen that you're communicating with the person you're visiting, or at least make an effort to do so. Whereas if you're outside, you can just walk along silently, and there's not that pressure at all. So that was one example. Another example was of an elderly couple. He was a former, I don't know what his career was, she was a former school teacher. So many, I don't know, it just seemed remarkable the amount of school teachers that seemed to be in dementia units. Certainly they loved joining in the workshops, as did this woman, front row. And he came in as well every day, every morning tea time, he'd be there, front row with her. Actually, that was interesting, that relationship, because she was the sweetest, most charming woman, and he was quite grumpy most of the time. He used to say, well, don't ask me any questions, I haven't got dementia. So he'd sit in the workshop front row, but you couldn't communicate with him. He didn't want you to communicate with him, because in his eyes, if you did that, it was proof that, you were showing him up as if he had dementia. I don't know how he thought. Anyway, you couldn't talk to him because he said, don't talk to me, I haven't got dementia. And she was lovely to him, and he was consistently grumpy. She rose above it. She never reacted. She was remarkable. She'd obviously been like that with him all his life. She just didn't let it affect her, and gave him a lot of support as a result. And I couldn't see that she received much support from him, but she was sweet and amenable and attentive to him. And of course, he kept coming to the unit to continue to get that attention from her. So really it was the other way round. Rather than him supporting her, really it was her supporting him. So there's all sorts of variations. And the support of husbands, the ones that are the relationships that really work, is where the sense of humour is intact. There was one couple, and they were both former school teachers as well, remarkably. She was a bit dismissive of him, but she had a really good sense of humour, and he had a really good sense of humour, even with her dismissiveness of him. And because of that, they had a really healthy, lovely relationship. And I think if you can keep that sense of humour going when the dementia starts, ramping up a little bit, it really helps a lot, because then you tend to not take things so personally or so to heart, and you can just have a bit of a good laugh, and that always gets the positive connection going. So I've written about all these topics at length in both books: The Resident's Voice, everything you need to know for a relative going into a dementia unit, and The Resident's Rise, everything you need to know once the person is settled in the unit. On Amazon, companion books, good for the handbag, good reading and essential reading for this big topic. And on my website, both of them, pietavalentine.com. So thank you so much for your looks and likes and interest. Please subscribe. 201 subscribers on YouTube now. Thank you. It's good getting over that 200 mark. And TikTok's doing well. Thank you. Please pass on the links and subscribe. Thanks.